These murders are almost identical. They even happened on the same day, and no one's ever been arrested for their murders, and they still are considered unsolved cases. Both of these cases happened before DNA testing was a thing, so keep that in mind, that there is a significant lack of evidence that like maybe today we would have had more options, but at the time they just didn't. Mary Ashford was 20 years old, bubbly, bright, fun young lady, and she went out dancing with her friend Hannah Cox. They went out dancing till about midnight, and then she met up with a man named Abraham Thornton. A couple people saw them together. There's eyewitness statements seeing them together around midnight, so we know that they did see each other at least around that time. So at 4 a.m. on May 27th, a few hours after she was seen with Abraham, she comes back to Hannah's house to pick up her work clothes because they had gotten ready after work before they went out dancing. So it's 4 a.m. and Mary leaves her best friend Hannah's house to go home. Hannah says she didn't see her again. And a few hours later, Mary's body is found bloodied, bruised, beaten, and there are signs of SA. Authorities believe that she was drowned. And again, at the time, there wasn't DNA or a lot of forensic evidence, so it was pretty limited with what they could find at the scene. She was found in Pipe Hayes Park in Birmingham in the United Kingdom, and a landscaper or a worker of the grounds found her. And when he found her, he says that he saw like a trail of blood on the grass and then followed 2 sets of footprints. He was very adamant that there's 2 sets of footprints when he got there. So Abraham Thornton, the guy who she was seen with that night, is obviously a suspect. And then the man who found her, I think he's a suspect as well. But there's a few problems with either of them being the suspect. If Abraham killed her, why would he be so obvious about the fact that he was like going out to see her? You'd think that if he was planning this, he would have like covered his tracks better. He wouldn't have let people know that he was like gonna be with her that night. And then he even let her go back to her best friend's house and like say that she had just been with him. It feels kind of obvious that it would be him, right? And then with the groundskeeper, same thing. Wouldn't it be dumb for him to insert himself and be like, oh, I found the body if he's the killer? There's just not a lot of evidence and people aren't sure who it could be. Abraham was arrested and tried for the murder. He admitted that they had sex that night. And then he walked her back to Hannah Cox's house before 4 a.m. And then he says that after he walked her back, he did not see her again, and he gave an alibi. And that alibi was solid. He had 3 different people corroborate it. So they were like, well, it couldn't be him. And I couldn't find much on if they thought that the landscaper did it or anything, but no one is arrested or charged. So Abraham is let off, the groundskeeper is let off, and then I wonder if Hannah should have been considered as a suspect since she was the last person to see Mary alive. So flash forward a few years, and now we meet Barbara. Barbara was also walking through Pipe Hayes Park in Birmingham, so the same place. She had been out dancing with her boyfriend, and they had been dancing till about 1 a.m., and her boyfriend says that he dropped her off at the bus stop, but all we know is that she shows up, bloodied, body is bruised, signs of SA again, in the park. So he's a suspect, and then they also question a coworker of hers, and I couldn't find a ton of information on if they had a thing, or it sounded like maybe they dated at one point or something, and that's why he was suspected of it, but they interview him, and he gives an alibi, and they're like, I guess, it can't be him, but they go to corroborate it, and his alibi falls through. So this gives them enough to go search his stuff, and they find bloodied, pants, and between the bloody jeans and the false alibi, they feel like they have enough to try him. So they take him to trial, and his name was Michael Ian Thornton, same last name. So he has the same last name as Abraham Thornton, the guy who is suspected of killing Mary years before. So that's kind of weird. This trial is also acquitted because they don't have enough evidence against him. And this is where it gets weirder. I mentioned that Mary was killed on the 27th of May. Barbara was also killed on the 27th of May, just years later. They both were found dead, beaten, in Pipe Park in Birmingham, in the same place. They both had really similar MOs. They both had gone out dancing with some sort of love interest, and then both people who go to trial have the same last name. It's clearly not the same guy in both trials, so they're like, could they be like relatives, like sick, twisted cousins or brothers or dad and son? Could it be something like that? People just don't know. The only reason that they know that it couldn't have been the same person twice is because these cases happened 157 years apart. Mary was killed in 1817 and Barbara was killed in 1974. And if all of this wasn't weird enough, They both told multiple friends and family members that they felt like their end was coming, they were dreading death, and they felt like something bad was about to happen to them.